Dr. Randolph Stone um, was someone who was interested in all levels of healing. And one of the kind of the unique aspects of his work, it's not unique compared to many spiritual teachings, but it's kind of unique from the point of view of someone who did body work. He really focused on involution and evolution. And he talked about that each of us has a responsibility as individuals to keep our own balance of involution and evolution. And he defined involution as we come from the source into form. We're manifesting in this world. The focus at the involutionary stage of things is to be how we work with the world skillfully, material creation. And so we come into form when we're born, and we go out of form when we die. So inevitably we come into this world and then we're going to be leaving. And as we leave, it's hopefully an evolutionary process. And the evolutionary process is aligning with one's soul's path, preparing to return to source. And the focus is waking up and working cooperatively with all life. He described this as like from the chakra point of view, when we come in, the energy moves down through the chakras. So it's a downward and outward process manifesting in the world. And that as we align with our soul energy and source, we come back up through the chakras, and ultimately, as we die, we release through the crown. So that, and the pictures in the polarity therapy volumes show, this energy coming down as involution and up as evolution. And he considered involution generative, downward and outward, whereas evolution was regenerative and upward and inward. And he really saw the whole physical body as not as independent as we might think, that we're in a web of life, and that all human beings have this capacity to balance involution and evolution. And what he said is, if they'll wake up out of the dream of sense life and indulgences, and by attention and interest in the finer energy fields, align with their source purpose. He also talked about how he compared it to like making a diamond, and that the more heat and pressure there is, the purer the energy can be. There was last weekend, November 3rd, there was a master's panel that the American Polarity Therapy Association focused on, and I think I'll just talk about that here. Some of the people on the panel, each of the people have been associated with polarity therapy for a long time. And Anna Chitty said, polarity therapy asks more of us than other bodywork modalities. There's something that's required of us. And Gary Peterson talked about every person is challenged in the balance of involutionary, being in the world, and the evolutionary, being with the navigator within. Where's the unity for each of us? Rose Culsa talked about this process as the sacred circle of life. Janice Marie Durand talked about soul-based choices and soul path. Jim File was the only person on the panel who'd spoken with Dr. Stone. I mean, like he had studied with Dr. Stone, for as long as Dr. Stone was teaching. And he just raved on what an outstanding human being he was, and just how much love and generosity and enthusiasm and curiosity he had, and it was really exciting to hear him talk about what a rare person Dr. Randolph Stone was. And Phil Young was really, his stories focused on trusting the flow and trusting what's in front of us and how we don't know what's going to come next, and really trusting the energy. And in this moment, on this day, again, we each have to find our own balance of involution and evolution, how we work with the world and how we align with our own inner sacred path. And for today, I need to relate to material reality with respect. And I'm aware of the polarity of respect and disdain, and I very much want to hold with respect. So as we move into this coming time, I just invite each of us to just see what's the balance inside for us. What do I need to do practically? And what do I need to do in my source practices? So thank you for supporting me in this. And I just, is there anything that you want to add?
One thing I want to add is it just seems like no matter what, even though I come from a different spiritual practice, it's still, I'm hearing the same theme, but it's just different words, so I can really just take my spiritual practice and put it right over your spiritual practice, even though they're called differently and have different names, it's still the same, the concepts and everything, because it's exactly what we study. The words that my guru tells me is what Randall Stone is calling involution and evolution. This is what we study, how we practice. So it's just interesting how the different different paths of spirituality are basically saying the same thing, and I can relate to it.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you say a bit more about the evolution part of being inward rather than outward? I was, kind of thinking, expecting, as you were saying it, I was expecting that the involution would be inward and then the evolution would go with outward, but it was the
Yeah.
other way.
Yeah. Yeah. So evolution being upward and inward, anything that brings us into connection with our true self, source, higher guidance, what Gary called navigator. And it's like we'll just know whether we come through that from practices, spiritual practices, or through dreams, or through listening. But just there's a way where wow, I'm in alignment. I'm in the midst of my core right this minute, and whether that's being in the ocean, being in the sea, and doing mantras, or just being quiet in oneself. And yet so anytime we're in that place of alignment where we can feel the clarity, like, yes, that we're on our evolutionary path. Whereas when we're focusing on what do I need to do now in the world, that's more involutionary. And yet there's also choices in terms of like how we interact with the world, and the same sorts of the way to enhance evolution is through things like loving kindness, equanimity, respect, joy in the happiness of others, compassion, and those same sorts of things that strengthen our evolutionary process can also be applied to how we interact on an involutionary level. And that can create a stronger balance of both, with integrity. Does that make sense?
I think I got a bit, confused because, we were talking about mentioning, the evolution being, part of, when we leave the world. I was kind of thinking of it being more outward, but then, yes, you would kind of go back into, it would be an in-center and, core process leaving as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, like in my spiritual path, it's like we believe that, well, there's the source, there's the one source, and then as like we kind of condense and contract into individual form. So we go from being an all one and all knowing, and then through contraction, we then become individual form, and our individual form does not know that we are the bigger form. And the process is to then discover we are an individual form of the bigger form, of the large form, of the one form. And then the process is to stay in that knowing and then unravel the layers so that we get to that knowing. So you travel back up and become more expanded. And what happens is from that knowing, when you're in the midst of the world, when you're that one, then what happens is you then emit that knowing outward just in your daily practices. You do the daily practice to stay in that knowing and to know deeper that you're the one, and you just expand your knowledge of the one. And at the same time, as an individual, because you're emitting that outward in the world.
And as you said earlier, Andrea, that it's like two systems, different words, it's same.
It's the same, yeah.
And Dr. Stone, described this as involution and evolution, that he was also talking about how we need like energy. It's like we create energy on this evolutionary path, and it's shared, and it's a nourishment to all, to beings around us, and or we're nourished by other people's practice, and so he really emphasized that we're not as isolated as we think we are.
Mm-mm. And there's an energy once like in my practice, once there's an energy of grace, so it's not just you that's doing the revelation. It's also the energy. There's the energy of revelation that's also stirring within you. And then that's helping you, to know.
Yeah.
And you're emitting that outward too.
Exactly. And that inviting all the help from all the high beings that wish to be helping, and sharing that light with everyone.
Right, exactly. And I feel it. I know, like even all of the individual forms that was before us that did the practices and everything like that, they are there. And so we have that behind us to help us. That's that grace that's helping to reveal in us the knowing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to stop this recording, but because I just was really wanted to share this today, and I'm just really glad that the three of us could do this. And
yeah, it was nice to share it today.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, all blessings to everyone.